Good evening, everybody. My name is Saurav Chopra. I am one of the founders and CEO of Perkbox. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know you guys are all really, really busy. It's really, really exciting to see so many people so excited about employee engagement and happiness, things that keep us excited and get us going at Perkbox. So thank you. Thanks a lot to Henry. Thank you so much for your presentation. Really exciting thoughts for the whole audience to think about. And thanks to WeWork for working with us on this event. So I'm here to talk about gamification in the employee engagement and HR context. Things I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about. My job tonight is to simplify it, show you how some companies are actively using it, and what you can do in your own organizations to simply introduce it in a simple way and make a difference to whatever you're doing, your employees, your teams. Firstly, for those of you who don't know Perkbox, who don't know what we do, I'll spend 10 seconds, I promise, on Perkbox, and then we'll get into gamification. Perkbox is all about employee engagement. Our mission is to give power to businesses to help you connect and engage with your employees. There are three key pillars that we focus on. First and foremost, we focus on financial well-being. How do we get companies to actually drive financial well-being for their employees? Second, we focus on physical well-being. A healthy workforce is always a happy workforce. So how do you drive health and wellness in your organizational environment? And finally, reward and recognition. Emotional well-being. Emotional well-being is absolutely critical in driving happy teams and obviously successful businesses. So that's it about Perkbox. Now we'll talk about gamification. So what does gamification actually mean? Gamification is not gaming. Gamification is about taking game design principles and applying them in non-game contexts. So what does that mean? Obviously, many of you are active players of video games and will know what I'm talking about. But at a simplistic level, we're talking about some key game design principles like feedback, like transparency, like goals, short-term goals and long-term goals, like competition, principles like clear and transparent metrics displayed to everyone in an open environment. Those are the key principles of gaming. And gamification is all about taking these principles and putting them in a non-game context. The psychology of gamification is actually a bit different in that gamification and games are supposed to trigger the same neurotransmitters that sex, drugs, great food, leisure, fun trigger, which is dopamine. And that's why if we can make learning fun, if we can make all the things we do in an office environment fun and engaging, you can quadruple the motivation, the excitement, and the results that you can get from your team. So that's, in very simplistic terms, is what gamification is all about. A quick question for the audience. I mean, how many of you here have some kind of a gamification or points-based systems or any other such tool that is being used in your organizational environment? Hands up if you guys have. Right. So there's lots we can do here. It's not complex. There are very few simple things that you can do to introduce this into your environment, and hopefully, we will learn of a few case studies in which companies have done so in a similar manner. So why is gamification important now? Why is it important in the HR and the employee engagement context? At Perkbox, obviously, we look at a number of companies. We provide such solutions, and we see three key motivators which are driving gamification in the HR and the employee engagement context. So one of the things that I guess we are all quite familiar with is the lack of employee engagement. The larger the organization becomes, the harder it becomes to drive employee engagement. Research was done by Gallup in the US, which said that about 51% of employees in the US organizations are actually actively not engaged in their work environment. So clearly, we have a big engagement problem that we're dealing with. Whether companies are large or small, that's one key motivator, which is seeing the driving of gamification solutions. The second context in terms of why gamification becomes really, really important is the pattern of work behavior is changing quite a lot. We have a lot of remote workforces. We have Gen X and millennials who have been obviously in the workforce. The needs, the emotional needs of these obviously categories of workers are very different to some of potentially the previous generation. So they're also moving frequently, more frequently between jobs than the older generation. And in the context of Gen X and millennials, gamification also becomes very interesting. So what does gamification do, and why is it something that can solve some of these problems? Gamification changes the motivation from extrinsic to intrinsic. And so you don't need to be driven to do certain things by your managers, by external forces beyond yourselves, but you are driven to do them yourself through intrinsic motivation. So I'll show you some case studies, some interesting examples of companies that are using it very actively and have seen some great results from it. So the other question which gets asked is gamification generation dependent? Is it something for millennials, Gen X, people who have kind of grown up playing Candy Crush, Call of Duty, and so on and so forth? That's actually not the truth. I mean, it's been proven, it's a stereotype, but it's been proven through some pilots that actually older people and the more senior employees and women actually engage much more actively when gamification-based systems have been deployed. So one example that we looked at was a pilot that KPMG Australia did. They did a pilot to drive more awareness of KPMG capability solutions across their workforce. Obviously, as a large organization, KPMG has a lot of different practices, and not all employees know, what are the capabilities of the firm. So they introduced this pilot with the gamified platform, and what they actually found was that the more senior employees and the women were actually the power users of the system. So a lot of the younger demographic, they would log on, use the system, but the people who were actually the power users were the older demographic and the more senior employees and the more experienced employees. So it actually drove up by 21% the knowledge of KPMG capabilities across the organization. So so the answer is it is not generation dependent. It works across the board. So I will share with you some case studies about companies, small and large, that are using gamification really, really effectively. One of the case studies is actually a Perkbox customer. It's a company called Snowflake Gelato. I'm not sure if they're here tonight. Snowflake Gelato their whole mission is to serve up happiness in the form of gelato. So they have, a chain of high-end luxury gelato places across London, and they actually use a really, really interesting system which uses gamification to drive employee engagement and actually customer service. So what they do is they give snowballs. Snowballs are points they award to their employees for great customer service or for personal development. So if an employee does a really good job at their personal development and growth, they get snowballs. So snowballs then obviously can be exchanged in lieu of rewards, in lieu of cash. And it's a really, really interesting example where small to medium-sized businesses has used gamification principles to really improve their business. So their staff churn has actually gone down by about 50%. And their TripAdvisor ratings have shot through the roof by using the concept of snowballs. So that's a really, really good case study of a use of gamification. The other example, obviously looking at the corporate world and the large corporate environment, is Barclays. So Barclays uses gamification in their recruitment process. So the recruits of the business are, they go through a stock trading game. It's built by a company called StockFuse. It's a 13-week stock trading game, and your performance in the game and your behavior in the game actually gives guidance to recruiters at Barclays, and based on your performance, you're actually shortlisted for interviews. So that's another interesting example used at the recruitment stage by obviously a large corporate like Barclays. Another example, a leadership training. So Deloitte had this challenge where it was very, very hard for them to get their senior execs. Again, this is Australia. I don't know why a lot of the gamification case studies are from Australia, because it was KPMG Australia as well. But clearly they're thinking far ahead in terms of gamification than any other part of the world. So Deloitte had this problem where their senior execs, it was really, really hard for them to get them to go training and all that stuff, obviously very, very busy people. So they introduced a gamification model. They introduced badges, leaderboards for their very, very senior execs. And the results were quite awesome for them. They saw about 50% shorter completion of their leadership training and exercises. They saw about 46.6% of the people coming back to that platform every day, which was unheard of in the history of the firm when it came to these leadership training from their top management. Another interesting example, obviously, the partner at Deloitte Digital in Australia also talks about dopamine. So clearly that's the underlying thread there. Another example, one of my personal favorites is alcohol and Tamagotchi. So Puerto Rico, obviously the drinks giant, one of the things they were struggling with is to how to get managers to be more responsive, engaged, and to really, really show that they can answer all the questions related to employee engagement, get the employees on board, and so on and so forth. So what they did is that each of the managers got a Tamagotchi called Ricardo. So in addition to being fed, which was the job of the manager, the Tamagotchi actually asked the managers questions that typically employees would ask in terms of onboarding, growth, goals, and so on and so forth. And then what really, really interesting thing started happening, that a lot of the managers started competing amongst themselves to be nominated as the best manager by Ricardo. So really, really interesting example. So, where managers are obviously improving their leadership, their training, using Tamagotchi. So these are some examples of obviously of case studies across recruitment, across employee engagement, across leadership training, L&D, and across manager engagement that showcase what gamification has done for companies large and small. Next, just what I want to talk about quickly is how do you get going on gamification? First and foremost, it's really key to understand the key principles. Gamification is 75% psychology and 25% technology. You don't need a complex technology platform to implement gamification. However, obviously technology eases the job, and if you want technology, you know where to go. We are here at Perkbox. However, you can do this without technology. You can do it with pen and paper. Right? So the key is to understand the principles. The second thing is to really understand what are the key elements of the gamification system. The key elements are motivation, ability, and the ability to drive triggers. So motivation meaning obviously your employees, your team needs to be motivated by something, whether it's badges or financial rewards. That's a very, very key element of putting a gamification system in place. The ability, they need to have the ability to hit the goals. You don't want to put goals that are too far ahead or too stretched that no one's going to hit them and no one is going to win an award or recognition. So that's the second key element. The third key element is how do you drive triggers that help people propel even further. So those are the three key elements, really important to scope it out when you actually put a gamification system in place. Thirdly, really important to identify the key issues. What are we trying to solve through gamification? Is it is it a productivity issue? Is it a performance issue? Is it an issue with, sickness or whatever? So try to look at building the system around the issue that you're trying to solve, which is unique to your environment and your organization. It's really, really important to build the system from ground up. You cannot have a top-down approach. Different teams in organizations have their own needs. So the marketing team may have their own need. the HR team may have their own need, the engineering team may have their own need. So those are the key principles to consider when you're launching a gamification platform. Some quick examples of how you, in very simple ways, can introduce gamification through your business. Example of employee advocacy. So a lot of companies, fast growth companies, small companies, we have the challenge that we want to get as much social media awareness as possible. And one of the best proponents of your business in the social media environment will be your own employees. So why don't we build a gamification system around that? Why don't we give coins to the employees every time they like or share any post about your organization on LinkedIn or Facebook? Just asking them to share is one thing. However, if you build a bit of fun into it, then it becomes much more exciting. Simple use case can be done very, very easily. No need for complex technology behind it. Other example, if you're not on the ground floor, your office is not on the ground floor, get people to walk up the stairs. Give badges based on the number of steps they've used. Very simple, will drive healthy employees. So if you're not on the ground floor, this is perfect for you. If you're on the ground floor, get them to walk up 2 floors and come down 2 floors. Peer-to-peer recognition. Get some stickers. Get some stickers, get some badges, give it to your employees. Give them, again, you can use technology to do stickers, but you can actually order stickers, customize it to your company. They can stick it on the back of their laptop or their phone covers. Very, very simple stuff. And they will feel engaged, empowered, and obviously they'll say, they'll be very, very happy with the organization. Finally, one slide on where we think gamification is going. We think in the very near future and definitely in the long term, you will see gamification embedded across HR systems, whether it's L&D, whether it's HR, health and wellness, or employee benefits. Things will naturally be gamified. It'll be a core feature of all employee awareness, HR, and engagement systems that are out there. It will be automated, it'll be embedded within the system, and it'll be driven by business rules that you as a business in your given sector will define. So great example, sick leave. If you're in a hospitality business and you see a lot of sick leave, you can automatically link your HR system of the future will have APIs linked to a gamification platform where employees who have the least sick leave will get badges and leaderboards and things like that. So these are some examples, and these are the trends that we're seeing. So that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the evening. We're all around here. If you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer.
That's it.